Lottie, welcome to 40 Minute Mentor. It's a real pleasure to have you here. How are you?
Yeah, I'm really good. I'm riding the high of Dragon's Den right now, so I feel invincible.
Oh, I love that. I watched it with my wife and we were cheering you on, and we're going to talk a lot about that in a bit. But before we do, let's kick you off with some warm-up questions, quick fire questions. So please finish these sentences after me. Number one, the most memorable day in my career was when?
Getting headhunted to join the board of M&C Saatchi. Yeah.
Amazing. Not many people can say that. One word others would use to describe me is?
Driven.
I can tell. Love it. My biggest failure to date is?
Probably setting up a big shop in Westfield when we started MyoMaster and spunking a lot of cash that really killed the business.
Okay, maybe that's something we'll come back to because that's a really good one. I measure success by?
Like a calm nervous system. Like how happy and calm do I feel? That means everything's going all right.
And that is not always the case with entrepreneurial life. And if there was one thing I could change about entrepreneurship, it would be?
Access to cash.
I am really looking forward to this. I have been listening to other podcasts you've been on, watching videos, and I think your story is so inspiring. But before we dig into all things MyoMaster, I want to start at the beginning. Do you mind telling us a bit about your upbringing? Where did this entrepreneurial spirit come from?
Yeah, so my dad's from Jamaica, first generation immigrant, and my mum is Irish. And I grew up in South London, and my dad's a hustler, a proper hustler, but like no education, nothing. Right. And so is my mum, like the hardest working people you'll possibly meet. My mum still has 2 jobs. She goes to work in the day, then she goes to another job in the evening.
Amazing.
And I grew up, had an amazing childhood, got a brother, like really amazing family unit. And then I went to military school when I was 11. And that was really kind of fundamental in shaping my sort of, drive.
Yeah.
Very regimented, a lot, like they ring a bell to wake you up at 6 a.m. You do chores, you march to breakfast, you do 12, 13 hours of sport every week. Like it was very intense, silent prep for 2 hours every night, like a proper military environment. Yeah, Sunday, like cross country, even if it's snowing, doesn't matter.
Wow.
And so I think like that teaches you discipline, routine. And also my parents, I think they didn't have a lot and they were determined that my brother and I were going to be successful. So they were really sort of disciplined about making us have great habits and take our schoolwork seriously and all of those things.
Yeah, it is so familiar because my parents are teachers and they purposely went into private education so we could get into private school. And I went to a charity school called Christ Hospital, which is the most unique, diverse place ever, but so much of that rings true. You know, sport all day, every day, up early doors, silent prep, marching to lunch.
Yeah.
It rings a lot of bells.
Wow.
So that's really cool. And you can definitely see how that has sort of, created that drive in you. Before you started MyoMaster, you had a very successful career in all things PR and advertising, which you alluded to. You're on the board of M&C Saatchi at a really young age, which is unbelievable. I know you initially started the business as a side hustle from that world. So, and I guess that's a common story for entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
But do you mind sharing kind of a bit about that time of your career and why you started it as a side hustle and how you actually balance those two things?
Yeah, well, I had this vision when I started working. I was like, I'm going to be on the board of a big agency before I'm 30. And I was just like, that's what I'm doing. I'm not entirely sure why that was my goal, but it felt like that was the thing. And so I was over the moon when I got headhunted to join M&C Saatchi. It was like my dream. It'd been on the vision board. It came into reality. But I got there and it was the most toxic and difficult environment to be in. And it was really this kind of like boys upstairs culture. You know, they were built in the 80s. They literally used to call the bosses the boys upstairs. Like that's how they talked about them. And it was just this culture that I didn't enjoy. And it's sort of one of those things where you've worked so hard for something, you've dreamt of it, you achieve it, and it's nothing like you imagined it would be.
It's gutting.
Yeah, so that's kind of when I sort of started thinking about like doing something for myself, creating my own environment, being my own boss, having freedom, all of those things. And it made sense to me to do it on the side and to try. And I think it's a really good piece of advice for anyone who wants to start their own business. Is if you can, always keep your job and keep doing it on the side, because A, you'll find out if you like it enough to make time for it. B, you can find out if you've got product market fit. before you actually quit your job. And 3, it takes away the pressure because you're not like having to sell product because you've got to pay your mortgage or whatever it is.
So
like
true.
it gave me the space to do it in the way that I wanted to do it because I didn't have the financial pressure of, you know, all the things if you're just doing that, doing your business.
I love that. I wonder how many amazing businesses were created off the back of a bad experience or a bad boss or a toxic environment. There's definitely bits of my prior career that I was just like, God, I never want to work in that setup again.
Exactly.
And I think that's why I always am like, I don't think I could ever work for anyone again.
Yeah.
So hence
I think
this
we've
has to
become
work.
unemployable now,
Yeah,
right? Like, I don't know
100%.
who could be my boss now.
I
Good luck
know.
to you.
It's so true. It's so true. No, that's really interesting. I guess when you took that leap, you weren't just a full-time founder, you were also a recent mum.
Yeah.
Which is like a double whammy of like
Stupid.
incredible, intense, exhausting things all at the same time. So how did you navigate such a like hectic time?
With a lot of tears
Yeah.
and a good husband.
Oh, that's important.
But
Shout out to your husband, Joe.
shout out to the people holding it all together behind the scenes. No, I think like I'm someone who likes to go at 1,000,000 miles an hour. And I always say this, I think it's really important to know yourself, like when you have a child, because it changes your whole entire world. But you have to know what you really want. So for me, like sacrificing my maternity leave, it was difficult, but it was so aligned with who I am. Like I was never going to be the mum that was going to stay at home for a year. Like it just wouldn't have made me happy. So it was a really difficult time, but I think it's again, like the making of the business because you become efficient. You're like, I don't have time to waste. I don't have money to waste. Like, and also when you have a kid, I think you get so, have you got children?
I do have an 8-year-old daughter.
Yes, you get so much purpose, right?
100%.
You're like, I'm doing this for you. So
Totally.
it was a really transformative time in my life.
It's really inspiring and a really important message, I think, to share, because I think there's still those kind of archetypal stereotypes of what being a mum should be, like when to have a career, when to start a business, all that sort of stuff. And it's actually, that's just not the case. There are so many examples of people doing it in their own way, and it's what works best for them and their family. And I think you're 100% right. When Sienna came along, it totally changed my life in amazing ways, but it did focus my mind. Like it was like, I have to make this and more than ever, not just because I don't want another boss, but I have to create something that, one, she'll be proud of, two, that sets up our family for life.
Exactly.
But actually it's that focus of, I want to get back. And this took me, I'll be honest, this took me a few years to get to the point where I realized how much I was missing. It was really the pandemic. And now I'm like, I do the school runs 3 days a week. I see her almost every day when I used to see her only at weekends.
Right.
And it's made the biggest difference to my happiness and also to me as a founder, I think, because I'm much more efficient. So I'm really glad you said that. We've got to talk about MyoMaster. For anyone that hasn't come across the business or saw you on Dragon's Den, which we will talk about in a minute, do you mind giving us your elevator pitch for the business and tell us a bit more about like who your perfect customer is?
Yeah, so at MyoMaster, we're building the home of physical optimization, and it's all about creating products that help you get the most out of every single day. And it's a really important mission for me and for Joe, my co-founder / husband, because that's who we are. Like we are, people in our 30s with kids, with busy careers, and we really are ambitious and we want to make the most of everything. We want to be great parents, we want to be great at work, we want to be fit and healthy and have longevity in our lives. So our perfect customer is anybody that fits in that bracket, is someone who wakes up every morning and has the drive to just make the most of every day and be the best at everything that they're doing. And we create products that help them to do that.
Love that. And do you remember that moment where you realized there is serious potential in this business?
It's really funny you should say that, because actually on the way here, I was like writing a LinkedIn post about the fact we're just about to do our first £1 million quarter, which feels like a big moment for the business.
Amazing. Congrats.
And I think there were so many moments in the last couple of years where I just couldn't see the wood for the trees. And I think that happens a lot in your early stages of entrepreneurship. And not a lot of these stories get told, because I think most of the stories that get told are the Gymsharks of this world, where like it just went like that. Yeah. But I think most people's businesses don't happen like that. And actually it's a bit more slow and steady. And so I think I don't think I've had a single moment where I think it's going to be amazing. I think it's really been like just plowing through continuously and keep getting up every day and trying, and it's grown sort of slowly.
And that resilience and drive is like often the most important trait in a founder, to kind of push through when others say you can't, or it feels too difficult. And clearly you've done that. I guess for anyone that doesn't know the origin story of it, we should probably do that now actually, because it's a really unique one and very intrinsically linked to sport and all that. So do you mind sharing a bit about how it all came to be?
Yeah, so Joe, my husband, was playing at Harlequins at the time, And he was constantly getting injured. Like, he's had 12 operations or something ridiculous in his career. And he was out with Achilles tendonitis, was supposed to be fit in my kitchen, was not doing as he was told, put a stool end on the end of a drill, B&Q drill, started treating it on his calf and using it as a massager, because he'd had this really expensive treatment in central London that Harlequins had sent him for, but was like crazy out of any normal person's budget. And so he was trying to mimic the effects of the treatment that he'd had with this drill. He takes it into Harlequins. All the boys like literally laugh him out the room and taking the piss out of him. Like, we've got elite physios down the corridor. You don't need to be bringing in your B&Q drill. Anyway, he leaves it in the changing room. As he's coming back from treatment, he just hears like the sound of the drill in the changing room. Gets in there. All the boys are using it. If you follow rugby, Carl Sinclair was like, Grazer, here's 200 quid. Like, I need this. It feels amazing on my back. Got like 7 orders. Went back to B&Q, bought more drills, and then the word like sort of spread, and all the other boys at the clubs were using it, and England were using it. And so that was the genesis. And Joe always says that like if it had been left to him, he'd still be selling B&Q drills, or like it would have been forgotten. But I was also training every day, had just run a marathon, and it ruined my foot. I couldn't walk properly, and so I started using it on my foot. And then we started thinking about like, if you have access to all this elite product and elite treatment as an elite level athlete, but what does it mean for the everyday person? Like, how does the everyday person take care of their body? And so I think it's evolved now from sport into like this kind of physical optimization piece. But that was its genesis.
Really cool. And you've been on an amazing ride. You've created this 7-figure business. You're having record quarters. I mean, huge congratulations. So many successes. And yet I know there will be tons of trials and tribulations. And we've already mentioned that, often these podcasts are about all the good stuff, but I want to focus on some of the harder parts of the journey. So what have those tough bits been for you? Any like really important lessons that you've learned as a founder that you'd like to pass on to any aspiring founders listening?
Yeah, I think the point you made about resilience is kind of everything. I've had this conversation a lot with different founders, some who are kind of a million miles ahead of us, people who've sold their businesses. And really, I really think it comes down to not quitting. Yeah. Like, I think that is the fundamental thing, because even if your idea doesn't start out right, I think you can continually pivot until you get it right. And I think the winners of the game are the people who don't give up, really. So not true. The people necessarily with the best ideas or the most amount of money. And I fail every week, and I'm not exaggerating. And I think at the beginning, the failures really hurt. So I remember raising our first round of investment. I pitched over 150 people, and 147 of them told me to get lost. Wow. And like getting up and doing that every day is really hard. And people are telling you, like they did on Dragon's Den, it's saturated, you're not doing anything different, blah, 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 blah. But what I've really learned is that failure really is just part of the process. We should totally reframe it in our mind. Like, you have to fail to do this journey. It's just part of what you do. And now if I get rejected, I'm like, well, on to the next one.
That's so good. And that's, I think for any early stage founders listening, it takes a bit of time sometimes to kind of get used to that. But it's a really important thing. The quicker you can get over the knocks, the better, really, isn't it? So you can just kind of keep plowing ahead. And it's a good segue to fundraising, actually. You alluded to that. And I didn't realize how, I mean, that's really good for people to hear, I think, how many knockbacks, how many rejections you get. But you persevered. I know you don't believe that the VC route is for everyone, which is something that we've been talking a lot on this podcast, particularly given the macro climate. So I'd love to understand a bit about your approach to fundraising, how it's gone, any learnings from doing it over the last few years.
Yeah, and my approach is that I think actually we should flip the switch on the VC world, in which we need to understand that actually very few companies are relevant for VCs. I think we get fed a narrative as entrepreneurs that getting your big round raised by a VC is the win. Yeah, it's really not, and it is only right for companies that can 10x the return. You have to understand that. I'm not building a company that will 10x the return, and I'm not embarrassed to say that. I want to get to £60 million of revenue. That's our big goal, and it's not right for VCs, and that's totally cool. So we've raised all of our money from angels. Nice. Neither Joe or I have a wealthy family or anything, but our first investment was from my former boss, and we went to people that, connections that you make along the way. And I think people should consider angels. I really, really do.
100%.
They're amazing. They often leave your business alone. There's a lot less at stake for them because they're often, they've got their own careers, they've got other money. Whereas for VCs, this is their career, managing you and making sure you get output. So I think you also need to understand that. And then I think in terms of the learnings, it's get comfortable with rejection and don't be embarrassed about that. It's totally fine. And secondly, you've really got to manage a fundraising process very efficiently, and you should approach it efficiently. Yeah. Things like having a deal room and all your documents in the right place, knowing exactly your valuation, having everything together puts you a million miles ahead when you go and have conversations with people. I think it really impresses people.
For sure.
And being kind of rigorous about the process is really important.
It's a great piece of advice. And actually, again, perfectly leads us into Dragon's Den, because I'm sure from your pitch that you had all of that very much locked down. And it's one of those incredible shows that has just, I think it's got a whole new group of, a big section of society have been interested in entrepreneurship and business as a result of it. It's such a cool thing to be a part of, and very competitive. And you've had tons of positive responses and press off the back of your performance. Let's start at the beginning though. Why Dragon's Den? Why now? And what was the whole process like to apply and get onto the show?
Really weirdly, at the start of last year, I'm such a millennial. I do my vision board at the start of every year. And I put on it two things. I put on it Dragon's Den and Google. And I actually didn't get around to applying for Dragon's Den. And the producers got in touch with me. I just got a phone call in April to say, we'd love to consider you for the show. Would you be interested?
Nice.
Which I think is the power of manifestation. And then we went through a little bit of due diligence. I think if we'd have done it any earlier, it wouldn't have been the right time for the business. And I'm really glad we went on there at a time where we didn't actually need the money. Yeah. I think that's really important, because I've learned this through fundraising. There will be times when you're desperate for the cash. That's just the reality of starting a business. But I think if you go on that kind of platform and you're desperate for the investment, I think it comes across.
So true.
And so for us, we were willing to walk away without having an offer, although we wanted one. And the process is wild. So we were in there for 3.5 hours. Obviously, you saw 10 minutes of it. Literally, you have to stand on an X. You can't drink or go to the toilet or anything. And you literally get grilled by, I think there were 6 people in there when we went in there. For 3.5 hours. Like every aspect of your business, you can't check any numbers. You have to remember absolutely everything. You're just like,
wow.
And so that's why I cried at the end, because I was like just so exhausted from answering all these questions. And obviously it's like their job is to make a TV show. So that's the other thing you have to remember before you go in there. Like they are going to try and tear you apart, because they're trying, it's like the X factor of business. That's what they're trying to do. But for us, the exposure has been unbelievable. Yeah. We really have benefited from that.
It's super. I mean, it's a really smart way to get your product out in front of a whole new audience, particularly when you get funded. I mean, it's just such a cool thing to do. Was there anything really surprising about it? Did you know what to expect? Did you know that it was going to be 3.5 hours being absolutely grilled on the spot? Or did you go into it kind of fairly just ready for anything?
In terms of the 3 hours thing, I definitely was not prepared for that. I wouldn't have worn 5-inch heels if I don't know. But preparing for it, I mean, I prepared extremely rigorously. And I think this is a key tip for anyone doing anything in terms of fundraising or any pitch or any presentation. I literally locked myself in a room for 48 hours and watched Dragon's Den reruns over and over and over. Every single question they asked, I would prepare my answer for it.
Love that.
And I think you can't over-prepare for situations like that. You can't over-prepare for a pitch, and it is what helps you to stand out. And I think that's why we sort of came across quite well, because I literally had an answer for everything.
That's amazing. Yeah, you absolutely nailed it. And you handled very intense questioning, which some people will crumble under the pressure, but I think because you were so well prepared and really, clearly know your stuff, it just had an even bigger impact. Have you got any tips for anyone that might be pitching at the moment, or maybe in the future will go on Dragon's Den, alongside being really well prepared? Is there anything about actually the way you present, the way you communicate, that you think would resonate with our audience?
I think it's really important to be humble on those kind of things, because the British public hate people who are big-headed or come across as arrogant. So it was trying to demonstrate and back yourself without coming across as though you're sort of big cheese.
It's tricky. It's tricky.
It is really hard. I think knowing all your figures, but also not being afraid to they don't necessarily know more about your business just because they've been in business for a long time. No one knows more about your business than you do. So remember that. And that was kind of the thing with Stephen Bartlett telling me about like who our customer is. I'm like, you don't know my customer better than I do. That's
you got some
straight
grief for
fact.
that.
yeah. I felt a bit bad because he was actually really nice to me. But I think just going in there with the confidence, it's your brand, it's your business. No one knows it better than you.
Back yourself.
Yeah, back yourself, exactly.
Love that. And you got Sara Davies, Gary Neville, hero, football legend, and amazing entrepreneur. They're both invested. Did you have anyone specific in mind when you went in there? And how has that how have those partnerships evolved since?
Yeah, so Gary, we knew they actually changed our week. We were supposed to be filming the week before with Emma Greedy, which I was gutted about because she's my all-time entrepreneurial icon. South London, mixed race. I'm like, she's my girl. Yeah. But we moved the next week, I think, because we were a sports brand, and they thought we would align with Gary. So we always had Gary in mind, and then Sara, I totally hadn't really thought about before we went in the den. But when I was in there, she kind of blew me away, and she is phenomenal.
Really?
I've never met anyone with a work rate like her. So she goes and goes and goes and goes. Like it's incredible. And also what she's built is exactly what we're trying to build in a different space.
Yeah.
So having that person who she started at a kitchen table with her husband, I don't know, 20 years ago now. They built like a £50 million business in exactly the way we want to. So yeah,
That's really cool. Yeah, because I hadn't really heard of her until Dragon's Den, and then you're like, wow, you have done so, and she's really young still as well. It's like incredible. Sounds like a great collaboration. Love that. I saw your LinkedIn post the other day, and you've had some mad coverage and traction. 180,000 website views, 10,000 messages, 50 million views on the clips on social media. I mean, I'd imagine in your wildest dreams you wouldn't imagine how much of an impact that's had. And would love just to hear a bit about the feedback you've had. Like, how has that been to have kind of had such a response, and have you already started to see the kind of uptick in sales off the back of it?
We hired a cinema to watch to think, because I'm a big believer in celebrating the moments, but also we hadn't seen it before it came out, so we were watching it for the first time with everyone. And if you're in somewhere for 3 hours, you're very much reliant on the editors. They can edit it however they want to.
True.
And so we were watching it, and actually after we watched it the first time, I was really annoyed because I thought it really didn't show the products in a great light, blah, blah, blah. And we went to sleep anyway. We woke up and obviously the whole thing had blown up. And we didn't, we anticipated a little bit of some comments and messages and stuff. But as over the weekend, it just gathered more and more momentum, and the content's been amazing. And when I say we've had 10,000 messages, not one single one has been unkind or negative, which I think has kind of changed my perception of people, because I was I'm a mixed race girl going on there. I think I was expecting some negative feedback, I just was. And not one message, every single message has been kind and positive.
Amazing.
Yeah, which is just...
That restores my faith in humanity.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I'll remember that for the rest of my life.
That's
and the messages are beyond belief of, inspiring people, and it was amazing, and I cried and all of this stuff. So I'm really glad that we got the opportunity to do that, and like I said, it's lifted me up from the doldrums of entrepreneurship. And you work clearly incredibly hard to, these things don't just happen. You deserve it, but it just goes to show what an impact those sorts of, and that's brave. It's brave to put yourself out there. If you had a bad day, if they ripped the products to pieces but actually you put yourself out there, and I think that says a lot. And I guess there's going to be people listening to this that think, I want to do that for my product. I've got something special that I want to share. So what's your advice for them about applying to the show? Any tips or points or suggestions of who should and shouldn't do it? I think it's really designed for product-based businesses. If you've got a service business, or even if you've got a software business, even if it's a consumer-facing app, I'm not sure it's the right platform for you. If you've got a physical product, I think it's amazing.
Yeah.
I also think I wouldn't go on there if you're too early stage.
Yeah.
I think that can be really sort of dangerous. And you do better when you've got some traction behind you and you can demonstrate that you've already done some stuff. So I think if you've got a product-based business and you've already got some traction behind you, I would highly recommend it.
Nice.
It will move your business into another stratosphere.
We haven't talked about what the future holds for MyoMaster. So do you mind telling us about, off the back of riding high, all the amazing press from Dragon's Den, what have you got in store for 2024 and beyond?
For us, it's about launching a couple of new products aligned with our vision of becoming the home of physical optimization. And it's really about investing in our brand and our community. And ultimately, like, we're going all the way. Like, I talk about building the Nike of physical optimization of sports recovery, and I really mean it. Like, I'm not playing. So yeah, big dreams.
I have a really sneaky feeling that you're going to go all the way. It's really exciting. Before we get to our wrap-up questions, I wanted to talk about wellness, because it is a topic that comes up a lot, thankfully more now than it used to in entrepreneurship. And I want to pick your brains as somebody that, is clearly, sport is really important to you. You're a founder, you're juggling parenthood and all that sort of stuff. How do you balance prioritizing well-being, health and well-being and fitness with being a parent, running a business with massive ambitions? Like, how do you do that? Because I find it very difficult. I know a lot of people listening to this will find it very difficult, and we could benefit from your advice and wisdom on the topic.
I think it is criminal if you are balancing that many things and you have to give your energy to that many people to not put yourself first. Like, I'm not afraid to say I'm getting a babysitter because I'm going to go train for 2 hours. I think, like, you can't give the people what they need, your child, the people who work for you, everything, if you haven't taken care of yourself. And I actually think we should reframe it in our mind as like, if I'm not in a good place and I don't feel good and I'm not healthy, then what use am I to any of the other people? So it's actually, you're doing yourself a disservice if you don't make time for it, and you're doing a disservice to all the other people around you.
I think it's a really important message. And I must say, like, for me, I know when I'm at my best. I'm playing sport, which is my passion from since I was a child. And there are times in the JBM journey where I have just let that go. It was literally about 10 years. Once I broke my leg playing rugby, stopped playing rugby, and just focused on the business. And I didn't replace it. Yeah. And it's only 2 years ago, like 8 years on or whatever, I started playing football again. It's totally changed my life.
Right.
It's totally changed it. I've been an amazing armchair critic of all sports. But I didn't enjoy the gym. I did a bit of boxing. I just found it, I didn't replicate the thing that I love, which was team-based sports.
Right.
And sometimes you just gotta, like, you've got to sometimes remind yourself what makes you happy.
Yeah.
And I've been a happier person since, and I think a better leader, better husband.
Exactly.
And, I think it's the case.
But interesting you say there about it being team sports
that's my thing. I struggle in the gym. I really struggle in the gym.
And I think it's, for a lot of people, like, they struggle to find their thing that really motivates them. And so for you, it's probably about, like, the sport, but it's also like the camaraderie and the energy you get from other people and all of that stuff.
So true.
So I think, like, taking time to understand your thing that lifts you up is really important.
And for any founder that's like, right, I'm hearing what Lottie's saying, I'm going to put it into action. Like, what does that actually mean, like, week to week, day to day for you? Like, how do you balance these different things? Do you kind of get up early, go to the gym? Like, what's your sort of schedule for this sort of stuff?
Yeah, so I don't want to buy into the hustle culture. I know people hate it when I say this, but I do get up really early.
Me too. I'm an early bird.
I know you're not supposed to say that these days, but, like, yeah, I get up really early. Mostly train in the morning, but also, like, on Monday night I went to the club for 2 hours, trained, had my sauna, did my ice bath, like, relaxed, all of that stuff. So yeah, for me, it's like fitting it in where you can, but also just, like, making sure you schedule it. And like I said, not being afraid to be like, right, I'm getting a babysitter, or I'm going to call so-and-so because I need that time. Because I think, especially as women, we feel like we've got to be at home and we've got to be, giving to other people all of the time.
Very true.
But I'm not into that.
No, fair enough. Love it. Well, I hope everyone's going to listen to this, and we're going to have healthy founders and ones that take their well-being and health and fitness just as seriously as building their business. Because I think you're right. If you do those things, I think you're just going to be happier, and you'll be able to go for longer. And we've said how hard you have to work to be successful. So it just makes common sense. We're sadly at our wrap-up questions, Lottie. I could talk to you for ages, so I'm sad we've only got 3 more left. But this is the 40-minute mentor. If you could be mentored by anyone, dead or alive, who would it be and why?
Oh, I'd be mentored by Sara Blakely, who founded Spanx.
Oh yeah, good one.
I mean, she is phenomenal. Built, like, $1 billion business, bootstrapped it. Not only that, but she's, like, incredibly humble. She has incredible energy. She's a mum of 4 kids. I just think, and she's a big advocate for women. I have a big admiration for what she built. Yeah.
Amazing. That's a great answer. She's definitely on that list of I really want to get her on the podcast one day.
Oh my
It'll be
God.
almost impossible,
Can
but
I
I'm going
come
to
and
try.
watch from outside the window?
100%,
I would do
100%.
that.
I've got this sort of list of a few people. She's definitely on it. We've told some of our listeners that you're coming on, the Die Hard collective of MyoMasters, and they've sent some questions for you. So, question roulette time. Can you choose 1, 2, or 3, and we'll see what they've chosen.
Oh, 3.
3, okay. How do you balance being business partners, a couple, and parents with Joe? How do you balance it all? Does it affect the relationship? How do you navigate difficulties or conflict?
There's been a lot. I'm
Okay.
not going to lie.
Yeah, of course.
Especially, obviously, because we had a young baby at the same time, and everyone knows who's had kids. That is hard.
Yep.
And we've done a couple of things. Firstly, we've got really different roles in the business, and I advocate this for married or not married. If you have a co-founder, this is vital. He looks after product. I do not get involved in product. Like, I'll see it and I'll be like, that's great, but I don't make the decisions on that. That's up to him. I look after everything else. So I'm like, that's not your place. And having that division has been really important. Also, Joe has another career outside of the business. So he's a rugby coach and he has big dreams with that. And I think that's been really important for us because A, it's meant we can keep food on the table, you know, at the early stages of the business. And B, he's got something else driving him forward. That's been really important for us. And also just trying to, when we go out for dinner, we'll be like, we're not talking about my last
Okay, that's important.
Yeah, just really having some boundaries about when you are going to talk about it and when you're not.
That's, again, really refreshing and I think a really good way to be. And I think that's it. Sometimes it can become all-consuming and there is no delineation between work and life, and you know, sometimes that can lead to even more conflict. So I think it's a really good way.
There's been conflict, by the way. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Like,
sure.
It's been bad.
That's impossible not to, right?
Yeah.
When you're, you know, you have, I mean, there's so much at stake as well. There's a lot of pressure, right?
Yeah.
I totally get that. Final question. What is the one piece of career advice that you would like to leave our listeners with?
You should always do things that are ahead of where you are. So like always put yourself out of your comfort zone. Always do things that you believe you're not ready to do, because ultimately that's how you grow. And I think a lot of women, especially, because I'm getting a lot of messages from women about wanting to start things. And I think a lot of it is because they sort of lack self-belief and they don't believe they can. And I think it should feel uncomfortable and it should feel hard.
Definitely.
That's when you make the big leaps in life and in your career.
Love that piece of advice. I've loved this conversation. Thank you so much, Lottie. It's been a real pleasure. Great to have you on 40 Minute Mentor. And I wish you all the very best. I have no doubt this is going to be an amazing year and I'm sure the years ahead will be similar. So thank you so much.
Thank you.